Well, it's a real pleasure for me to talk to these four. These are all good friends and colleagues, and all of us here know these folks. But also wanted to thank John Manoogian. John, raise your hand. John and I worked together a little bit on what the line of questioning should be for these people. And actually, John and I were talking yesterday, and one topic that kind of came up that John and I did not have an answer for, maybe one of you will, but I'll ask the question to all of you. If you think back about, some of the great eras of car design, the brass era, the classic era, I mean, you can cut them any way you want, muscle car era.
What do we mean?
We've had eras that focus on quality or safety or something. Do you have any idea of what era we're in now? When we look back on this time, what we'll think this is?
Wow.
Ralph, I'll start with you.
I would say the branding era. I think this is an era of branding where we're seeing a lot of companies searching for identity and really underscoring their presence with very remarkable branding efforts going on right now. I think that's what I would say.
Mm-hmm. Franz?
I might say innovation. We're looking at new powertrains, new forms of propulsion, whether it's electric, hybrid. We're just seeing the needle move from always this more horsepower, more gas-fed vehicles to brands like Tesla and other state brands that are bringing electric vehicles to the market. So that's pretty innovative.
And what do you think?
Well, I will say the era of experience. I will be just relating to what Ralph said.
Say it again, your mic wasn't on.
I would like to just relate to what Ralph said about the branding, but I think it's not the branding in terms of just messages. It's about delivering really the brand experience of your brand. Delivering, the experience era.
Mm-hmm. What would you say, Dave?
I'm going to do what she did. I like that.
Yeah.
To me, digital era. I mean, what everybody said. The branding, the electrification of cars. So to me, it's the digital era has kind of made the cars a little bit more adaptable, quicker. So I think because of the tool. So it makes the surfaces a little different.
And so maybe a follow-on question to that, if it is sort of the era of experience branding, let's kind of put that together. Given all the constraints, closer, okay. Given all the constraints, the standards, the regulatory environment, things that tend to drive vehicle design towards sameness, how do each of you, regard what to do in your own world? Dave, go ahead.
Well, I think it's an easy excuse to say that, but I think what Franz talked about, innovation. So if you are innovating safety-wise, airbag, whatever it is, packaging, the vehicle architecture, that I think that each brand has their own uniqueness with that. So you can move the needle around even within those regulations. And that's the face of the car is huge. I mean, everybody recognizes what it is. So you have that same parameter, but I think you can see in lighting from all the cars up there, there's a lot of interest in the grille lighting being really bold. So that's what I think.
Would you agree with that, Anne? I mean, you spend a lot of time in France, obviously, and it's a little different environment than this one.
Yes, what I would like to say that another aspect is to create this kind of innovation that we're talking about. It's no more the work that a few people can do in a little area of the enterprise. You need to just see some real collaborative co-creation room where people are bringing their talent together. So the expertise and the increase of the level of expertise that now is being required to do a car required also the quality of being able to collaborate. So I would say the digital era is bringing us the ability to actually have a much better level of collaboration that we used in the past. It doesn't, I will say, take away any of the traditional talent or craftsmanship, beauty that you want to do, but the digital tools enable you to actually go much further in terms of combining those things with the new tech that we are confronting right now, and to develop those innovations we see in cars today.
Yeah. Ralph, how do you resist sameness?
Well, I think we're about to see a revolt. I think you're absolutely right. The cafe standards, the aerodynamics, you can see car silhouettes are starting to get very, very similar because we all have the same challenges in terms of aerodynamics. But I also think what I see that's interesting is there's a new generation of buyers that their paradigms are very different from us and from my fathers and all such. Like some of the best-selling cars are not cars we would call attractive in the old days. Like a Kia Soul, great car, functionally incredible. but not your typical silhouette. And I think cars like that are really going to become more popular with the youth. The millennials have no paradigms that say a car has to be sexy to be attractive to them. So I think you're going to see a Revolt that really changes what we call a beautiful car. And I think that's okay. I think it's, there's a portion of the market that's ready for the anti-car aesthetic.
And certainly for Tesla, my goodness, you don't have the sameness issue.
Yeah, you know, starting a brand is always a challenge too, because you have a clean slate and you have to start with something and you have no history. But we also believe that, you know, beautiful product will capture people's hearts and imaginations. And there's plenty of good examples out there how a better looking, a better designed product wins over a poorly designed one. And you know, I think that's been our MO, and you know, we're finding our way. We're just establishing a brand nameplate in an incredibly challenging marketplace. So it's not without its struggle, but I think, you know, sometimes starting with a clean slate is almost more challenging. You have nothing to draw on.
Yeah. Kind of a follow-on question for each of you. I mean, did you see anything out on the show floor that to you it kind of struck you as, particularly in the concept vehicles, that was something kind of new and fresh that you think will lead toward a trend, or something that we'll see changing the face of design in the next few years?
Personally, I didn't find anything that was the revolutionary kind of move the needle and get everybody steering into a new direction. I saw kind of a continuation of form exploration.
We literally had a tie, so
that's true.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But if you look at the language of both those, you know, concept winners, couldn't be more, you know, opposed in terms of their language. But I think we're on the precipice of kind of breaking into something new, and we're exploring and trying to find that, but we haven't quite landed there yet. So hopefully next year shows up.
Well, for you, Ralph, anything
me,
that kind of...
No, he's right, and I always enjoy the variety, and I love coming to auto shows in general, because it's like a garden of ideas, right? Very different approaches. But I would challenge companies like Tesla that don't have to deal with the lump, that cast aluminum thing that's in front of the car or in the back of the car or whatever. That's what I think is going to allow us to really change proportions of vehicles as the engine's getting smaller. That's one thing consistently in the industry, except for my SRT brand. But everything else, the powertrains are in the 1.1 liter, 1.3, 1.4, and eventually no engine at all. So that should, I would hope, really allow some real freedoms for the designers to break away from the traditional nose, cabin, tail aesthetic.
You know, you were asking early on I don't know if I get it. You were asking early on about the question of which era we are. I think the diversity is really, you know, we have the diversity in terms of the type of design we can address, or the type of technology, and what's happening is with that diversity, the opening, you know, opportunities for designers is just huge. The diversity of concepts, technology. Nobody right now can just imagine that there will be one design that will lead the entire herd. You know, probably we will be seeing much more different schools, you know, living close to each other.
Good point.
And that's what we see right now.
Yeah, there are no uniform solutions out
and that,
there.
I think, it's good news.
Right. Dave?
I guess back to what Ralph talked about, that I think the brand is that there's opportunity, and you can see it up there, of almost over-emphasizing what the character of it is, and you can push it a lot farther now, especially when you talk about Tesla, that you could really give this radical brand statement, and then it can permeate into the production cars with a little bit less, you know, impact. But I think that for me, the back to the digital age, you can do things so quick that you could probably put out a few of them. For me, there was, you know, in this show, there was nothing where you went, holy shit, I got to go look at that. But they were nice. You know, you walk around and go, well, that's pretty good, that's pretty good, that's pretty good. Maybe it's, as you said earlier, we're getting used to it or something. But I think what Ralph talked about, having a different shape or a different uniqueness, I didn't find that here. So I think maybe that's the challenge for next year, if somebody go after that.
Okay, now question that's kind of personal to each of you. This is something I've been kind of burning to ask Ralph about, but I've noticed something over the past maybe 10, 15 years a growing number of automotive executives, designers, engineers that are really tuned into vehicle dynamics and are really good drivers and invested in things like motorsport and competition as kind of the laboratory for car development. It's kind of okay to be doing that, where, you know, 20 years ago it really, I don't think, was as much. Would you like to talk a little bit about that, Ralph?
I mean, my personal story, I've been in love with cars since I was a kid, and I used to play with cars. You know, I didn't know if I was going to be an engineer or a designer. And a lot of designers, I think, are really, I would say, half engineer mind. They have more of an engineer mindset than a typical fine artist, for example. So I've always been in love with the mechanical side of the automobile, and obviously a big fan of motorsports. Growing up in Montreal, where Formula One races were going on in my own city, literally, it was very exciting. So I've always had that part of me. As I grew up, Chrysler, I kind of sought out the performance team all the time and got involved because I used to get too many racing tickets on the street. I almost lost my license several times, so I figured it'd be a safer way to enjoy the automobile, and I just fell in love with it. And I meet a lot of young designers that love cars as well.
Yep.
But it's not true. It's not necessary to be into motorsports to be a good designer. I just think it happens to be in my story. But it is important if you're going to run a division. What I also find that's interesting with young designers, they're more interested in business. They're getting business degrees. They're very intrigued by their whole value system and understanding the total value chain of the business. More involved with technologies, with suppliers. They're really becoming very, very sophisticated designers nowadays that can speak to anyone in the business community. So I find that is really more relevant. You know, what I do is fun, but the overall relevance is education.
And it isn't just about go fast, it's about performance. And
marketing of it, the whole reason we race is for marketing, really.
Right.
So,
I mean, Dave and I were talking about that because that's the legacy of Honda. I mean, growing out of
And
it.
we don't race the market, we race to develop and engineer and to win, actually. That's why we race.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the lifeblood of Honda is that Mr. Honda himself was like, we're going to go to Isle of Man and we're going to win. And then we're going to go to F1 and we're going to win. So it was always developing the technology or something new from that. But I don't really like cars, so I don't.
But I had another question for you, Dave. You and your team just opened a new advanced studio in Los Angeles, and it's in a decidedly urban area. Talk a little bit about design environments and what you're doing with your team to kind of create an interesting high-energy atmosphere for design.
Well, we were in Pasadena, which, you know, if you're in Old Town Pasadena, it's very vibrant and lots of restaurants, lots of moving traffic and stuff. But downtown LA has always had this edginess to it and this sort of artistic bent. A lot of lofts down there, and so if you don't know our studio, we're close to where Staples Center is and by the auto show, the convention center. But we're like a block from LA Live. But all of that area is like hustle bustle all the time, and it's very vibrant downtown. And then the nighttime is a lot of for me, there's a lot of gastro pubs and bars, and like it's awesome. But I think for the designers, they want to be able to go and tell their friends, I'm working in this really cool building, and it's like high ceilings, and it's awesome, and we're right in the middle of all this emotional traffic. So the decision to move there was pretty easy. But I also have parking.
Yeah, it's a beautiful studio.
No, it is. It's really,
these Californians and their palm trees, really, enough already.
It's cool. We have a shipping container for a conference room. It's awesome.
That's neat.
Yeah.
A question I had for Franz, back to the topic of starting from scratch, with a kind of an interesting entrepreneurial figurehead, head of the company, but really no legacy, no background. Even I'm sure in terms of what you had to work with, the resources, you had to start kind of from scratch. But tell a couple of stories about that interaction with Elon. I bet it's interesting.
Yeah, well, I joined Tesla 4.5 years ago as the design guy, and there was nothing else. We actually started in the back corner of SpaceX. So we developed and kind of ideated what Model S was going to be in a rocket factory, which is fascinating in its own way and inspirational. And we didn't have a lot of gastro pubs or anything. We were in Hawthorne, but the idea of some of the things we talked about, both innovation and branding, was what we thought about the most as we were developing what Model S was going to be, because that car is really the foundation of the brand moving forward, and we will build and continue to build the story and the family of Tesla based on that vehicle. And I think, you know, the relationship with Elon and myself, where Elon is a product-driven, focused engineer and physicist at heart, and the communication that we have in order to achieve the vision is something that's unique, for sure. And we built a team and a studio around that and created a car that, you know, this year we're so humble to have received the Motor Trend and Automobile Car of the Year awards just for the innovation that we put into it, and the idea of building a brand from nothing and establishing a nameplate, like I said, in an incredibly challenging field. I mean, you just go out in that show and you look at all the product that's out there. Our mission is, you know, Elon's mission is to put people on Mars, and also to save the planet from the addiction of fossil fuel. And he's going to do both. And you know, our job is to try to support that, and you know, if we can change people's minds one car at a time and change the industry, and you know, it's awesome to see. You know, Lutz is sitting here, and he, you know, the Volt really came to be because of some of the work that we did at Tesla, and I think when we think of it that way, the innovation that we're trying to achieve is moving the needle and making a difference and an impact that will better our lives and better the future of the planet. It's more than just cars at that point. And so I think, you know, as a designer, how can we influence that? And that's, you know, what I think about on the bigger picture moving forward.
Yeah. And a question for Ann.